Over 75 million people in the US live in a neighborhood or subdivision that has an HOA, a homeowners association. According to a US News article, that's about 30% of all homeowners. Some of you might be thinking, cool statistics, bro, yawn. But if you live in Florida, which is one of the leading HOA states, a new House bill was signed into law this summer that could bring forth some interesting changes that you need to know about. I'm going to walk you through these changes, what they mean, and what you need to know about your neighborhood association moving forward. HOAs really tick off some people because they want to be able to do what they want to do with their property. It is America after all. And yet some people actually prefer them because the association enforces upkeep and can sometimes increase the overall value of the neighborhood. I mean, nobody wants to live next to a bright neon polka dot house, right? RubyHome.com has some interesting stats about HOAs. 66% of newly completed homes in 2022 are part of HOA communities, up 17% from 2011. Houses in HOAs tend to be worth 5 to 6% more than similar homes outside of HOAs. Typical HOA membership fees for single-family homes generally range from $200 to $300 per month on average. The rise of homeowner associations has been steady since the 1970s when they were virtually non-existent. In fact, in the 1970s, there were only about 10,000 HOAs, compared to now, which there's about 355,000 in 2020, just 50 years later. In the state of Florida, HOAs are incredibly common. Florida is one of the leading HOA states, coming in second only to Vermont, which leads in the percentage of people that live in an HOA, according to data from RubyHome.com. This summer, Florida saw some changes go into effect in the beginning of July. On May 24, 2024, Florida Governor Ron DeSantis signed House Bill HB 1203. The bill itself, which I've reviewed, is over 20 pages. And I also took a look at the legislative recap from Haber Law, which provided a great breakdown of the bill. So if reading puts you to sleep faster than my kids passing out after a sugar high, you're in luck. Because I did a deep dive into all of those pages, and here's what you need to know. But before we get into that, if you want to be informed, but maybe you don't really want all the details of this HOA update, and what you really want is just to get information on how to get started buying a home, that's what I'm here for. Schedule a discovery call, let me be your resource, and let's find that perfect home together. Anyway, let's go ahead and get into this deep dive. As of July 1st, 2024, Florida HOAs have to comply with the following changes. Notably, one of the first changes listed is that the Community Association Managers, or CAM, are now required to attend at least one board meeting annually. And in addition, they must provide contact information for each CAM representative. Many times HOAs have lackluster attendance at their meetings, both from people in the neighborhood as well as management. And oftentimes, being able to reach management can be almost impossible. This seeks to provide some accountability for management. According to the guide from Haber, the contact information must be available on the website or any apps, and it must be updated within 14 days of any changes. It also addresses continuing education for CAM members, requiring at least 5 hours of continuing education every 2 years, with at least 3 of those hours being related to record keeping. Speaking of records, these new changes are also addressing the availability of those records. When someone is buying a home in a community with an HOA, they should absolutely be reviewing the rules and regulations, the covenants of the HOA, as well as the financials, so they know what they're getting into before they buy. Are there pet restrictions? What rules are associated with the exterior of your property? Can you park a boat or an RV on the street or in your driveway? Can you paint your house neon green with polka dots? Is the HOA keeping reserves in place in the event that they have to repair the pool or do roofs if they cover those? These are all things that a buyer should be able to easily review and look over before purchasing a property that has an HOA. Sounds simple enough to review this information, right? What makes it difficult sometimes is tracking down those documents. Because if a seller doesn't have them, or even if they have an older version, there could be changes made, sometimes finding the latest version of these documents is a nightmare to track down. To be fair, some HOAs do a phenomenal job of providing access to the necessary documents. Unfortunately, there are others where it's like pulling teeth just to try to get an updated list of rules or regulations. This new bill requires that by January 1st, 2025, every HOA with 100 or more parcels must post a current digital copy of certain official records on its website or make those documents available through an application that can be downloaded on a mobile device. Those documents include the HOA's governing documents, declaration, articles of incorporation, bylaws, rules, and all amendments history, contracts to which the HOA is a party or the parcel owners have an obligation or responsibility, a list of bids received within the past year, annual budget, and any proposed budgets to be considered at the annual meeting, financial report and monthly income expense statement to be considered at a meeting, and current insurance policies, director certifications as required under Section 720.30331A. There's also a lot of specific requirements coming out for the accessibility of the websites. Requirements if records are ever subpoenaed, and stiffer penalties or criminal offenses for retention, production, or otherwise tampering with any official records. HB 1203 seems to be striving to fight financial corruption by setting up some new auditing requirements as well. These requirements depend upon the size of the HOA and the number of homes, but they do include required financial statements. They prohibit the use of HOA debit cards, and they create an avenue for owners to ask for a detailed account for any amounts owed to the HOA by the parcel owner related to his or her parcel. The board must then provide the information within 15 business days of receipt of the request. If the request is not responded to by the association, in certain circumstances, the fees may actually be waived for the homeowner. There is also an entire section of the bill related to the HOA board of directors, educational requirements, and the removal process. So if somehow somebody got onto the board and they are egregiously taking advantage or only letting their friends get away with breaking the rules, there's formal ways to remove them. HB 1203 also addresses architectural review committees, ARC, and certain rules that are no longer allowed in HOAs. According to the review from Haber Law, HB 1203 requires an HOA or architectural review, construction improvement, or other similar committee, ARC, to reasonably and equitably apply and enforce architectural and construction improvement standards authorized by the HOA's governing documents. Section F of that Haber review notes an HOA can no longer prohibit a homeowner from installing, displaying, or storing any items not visible from the parcel's frontage, an adjacent parcel, an adjacent common area, or a community golf course. Such items include, but are not limited to, artificial turf, boats, flags, vegetable gardens, clotheslines, and recreational vehicles. They also may not issue a fine or a suspension for leaving garbage receptacles at the curb or end of the driveway less than 24 hours before or after the designated garbage collection day or time, leaving holiday decorations or lights up longer than indicated in the governing documents, unless such decorations or lights are left up for longer than 1 week after the association provides written notice of the violation to the parcel owner. So bring on the holiday cheer and tell your nosy neighbor Gladys that she needs to step off and stop worrying about your garbage can being on the curb an hour too late. And this is super interesting because now when it comes to parking, an HOA cannot prohibit property owners, guests, tenants, or invitees from parking his or her personal vehicle, including pickup trucks, in the property owner's driveway or in any other area where the property owner or the property owner's tenant, guest, or invitee has a right to park as governed by state, county, and municipal regulations. The same is now applied to work vehicles too, so long as they're not commercial motor vehicles, so think semis and buses. It also expands to allow first responder, not just law enforcement vehicles, to park where otherwise designated by state law. So if your local municipality allows people to park on the curb, your HOA can't say anything about it. I've seen many HOAs where some of the rules require you to only have your vehicles in your driveway and not on the curb. But what this is saying is if your vehicle meets the requirements, it could be allowed to park on the curb so long as it's allowed in your local municipality, county, or city. These are some other interesting sections that caught my attention, as well as the attention of one of my subscribers who happened to inspire this video. So thank you, Tennessee volunteer. One of the biggest complaints a lot of people have about HOAs is that they are overly restrictive and unreasonable in the rules. And it appears that HB 1203 is trying to curtail some of these. When it comes to the architectural rules regarding remodels, exterior work, roofs, exterior paint color, workshops, garages, I'm curious how the line reasonably and equitably will be interpreted. But it does seem clear that if it's not visible, then it's allowed. And I think it's going to get very interesting to see how certain people try to camouflage things to keep them from view. Some other changes of note: unpaid installments or assessments can only bear simple interest, and members can now submit approval of online voting electronically and not just with written notice. It seems now that HOAs can't tell you what to do with things they can't see. They can't be as strict about telling you where to park your vehicles. Your garbage cans may live to see extra hours of daylight on your curb. Too bad, Gladys. And perhaps your Christmas lights will be able to shine into the new year. HB 1203 seems to have a lot of changes. Some have already gone into effect, and some will be going into effect as we move into next year. From a real estate perspective, I actually love the increased access and availability to the HOA documents. Sometimes they can be so hard to get a hold of, and when you're dealing with inspections and closing and major deadlines, any delay in getting those documents can be a huge deal. And what that means for you is you're going to be able to be more informed about what you're buying before you've put any money out of your pocket. But what do you think? Do you agree with these changes? Do you think the increased accountability for managers is a good thing? If you're opposed to HOAs, would this make you more likely to consider a community with one? And if you happen to like HOAs, do you think any of this has gone too far? And what, if anything, do you think HB 1203 missed? I would love to hear it in the comments. And hey, if you made it this far, you're probably pretty serious about getting into homeownership, and I'm pretty serious about helping you. So be sure to check the link in the description and set up a discovery call so we can see what you need to do next. And then check out my ultimate buyer's guide, which is going to walk you through the process of every single step to take some of the fear out of stepping forward into your first home. I'm Lindsey Johnson, your resource for all things real estate. See you next time.